My name is Nikki Barnett. I am the Director of Career Development here at Stony Brook University at the Career Center. It is my pleasure to be here with you today to talk about major and career exploration. So transitioning from high school to college. And this is a topic that we speak about very often. And we've learned a lot through the years about what works and what doesn't work. And our hope is that you'll be able to take a few things away that will help you as you're transitioning. Transition is a hard process, no matter whether you're going, from high school or you're going to be in college and then transferring to career. So we'll have a great time talking about that, and I'm looking forward to your questions. So just a little bit about myself. About for 14 years, I've been working in career services and higher education. And mostly I've been immersed in helping college students understand themselves better, as well as understand the world of work more fully. We know when students are coming in new to the university that if they're having some difficulties understanding, what they might like to do or what interests they have, usually lack of self-awareness comes into play. So we do spend a lot of time on that. And we do have an activity that we're going to do today to talk about that. And then also having a framework to understand the world of work. We're going to do that today, and I think you're going to enjoy that as well. I'm a double alum from Stony Brook. I'm trained as a social worker who, again, works with college students. I started out my career working with students who just didn't know what they wanted to do, and then transitioned to working with alumni for just the understanding the life cycle of career development. I am joined here today with Reggie. Reggie, if you would like to introduce yourself, he is a career coach intern. We have a career coaching internship at the Career Center, and Reggie is joining me today.
Hi, everyone. Welcome. Thank you for joining us today. Thank you, Nikki. So my name is Reggie Lagandi. I am a career coach intern working with Nikki at the Career Center, helping my fellow peers with their journey in trying to navigate getting ready for their career past college. I'm originally I'm a non-traditional student, so it means I am over the age of 25, either a military vet or a parent. All of those fall into being a non-traditional student. I transferred from Suffolk County Community College. And so this is my senior year at Stony Brook. And for me, I learned that my path was not the traditional path to where I am today. I originally worked in hospitality for almost over 20 years, where I had a career spanning different areas in hospitality management in the front and back of the house of hotels and restaurants. I had an aha moment that everyone talks about a few years ago, and I really wanted to go into a different way. I decided that I really wanted to be, I wanted to help people, but I worked in hospitality, so I helped people a lot, but I wanted to help people in a different way. So I knew attending college needed to be part of that plan. So my first interest was in human resources, working in the diversity and inclusion field. But after meeting really great professors along the way in my studies here at Stony Brook and at Suffolk, I realized I wanted to go into higher education administration. So after graduation, I'll be going to graduate school to study higher education administration, and hopefully go into the area of student affairs and diversity and inclusion and multicultural affairs, working in those areas.
Thank you, Reggie. Wonderful, wonderful. Yeah. So we want to make this. Reggie and I will be going back and forth. He's going to be co-presenting with me. We're going to make this as interactive as possible. We want to make sure that you can reflect and think about your current situation. Just as Reggie talked about his journey and some of the things that he's learned, you're going to hear more from him throughout this as well. So I'd like to launch our first poll. I don't have current access to do that just because of my full screen. So if someone can help me with launching that first poll, I'd like to start with a question about what do you think that how a major connects, and do you need to select a certain major that, to connect with a career? with a career path. Okay, we're getting some interesting. Okay, still people are responding. It looks like most people, with 74%, are saying yes, that you need to select a major that connects with your career path. Yeah, so I'm gonna share the results with that. Hold on 1 second. Can you see the results here? Yeah, so this is interesting because we work a lot on trying to be able to help students understand this, and and I think a lot of the reasons why most people think that you have to be in a certain career, rather a certain major, is because we hear that from society and the media quite often, right? We usually hear designer careers, lawyer, doctor, social worker, these vocational type of majors that might come up, where what you do in the classroom is what you do when you get out. In fact, when and that it can be that way for some majors, but the majority of majors, the reality is that it doesn't necessarily determine your career path. Reggie was just talking about his experience where he started one place and he's ending in a different place based on his experiences. And so I think one of the biggest aha moments for most students, which is why I'm sharing this now, is that when they come into the university, they struggle, right? They want to make sure that they understand this, but they think everything is weighed in by the major, because for the last how many years, right? You think my academics are going to be the thing that's pushing me along. Well, experiences matter much more. The quality of your experiences matter the most. Okay, and so what actually is an indicator for where you go with your career is based on what your experiences are. And then eventually how you articulate those experiences become really important. So we're gonna get into this a little bit more, but I just want to start with that, is that your major should be engaged by the interest that you have, not necessarily that you do it because you feel you have to. And so as an example, it could be someone wants to be pre-med and they think I have to be a biology major to be pre-med. Well, in fact, that's not necessarily true. Their requirements. I'm not an academic advisor. However, just as an example, you can major in psychology and be pre-med, right? So engaging an interest will be really important. All right. So what I'd like to do next is just go over what we're going to talk about for the next, I don't know, about, what are we at? We're just at about 50 minutes or so. We'll have time for questions. As you have questions, please feel free to ask them. So the first thing is that navigating the career life journey. This is basically the approach that we take when we're working with students at Stony Brook. We want students, as they come into the university, to understand that we're here to help them on this journey, and that it's not separate from life skills and the development of themselves as a person, right? Professionally and personally, they're developing and growing. So there are a couple of things that we'll talk about. One is that we'll talk about what that career journey is, ask you some questions, get you to think about some things. It's not always having the right answer that's important, but it's being able to have the right questions to be able to really think about and talk about with other people, so you can start to come to conclusions and make more educated decisions. So a universal truth is that we all experience change and uncertainty throughout life, right? So that's definitely going to be a part of the career as well, the career process or career development process as well. You're going to get stuck. You're going to feel uncertain. You're going to feel stuck. But what's important is that how we manage change and the uncertainty is more important, and how we nurture those things as we're kind of moving through college and beyond. We're going to talk a little bit about relating majors to careers and kind of answer any questions related to that. And then the importance of mapping your own journey and what that actually means. And we'll get into that as well. Reggie, I'd like you to talk a little bit about your journey, this idea of A to B, and what is it really like when you have an example of your journey?
Yeah. So for me, I kind of mentioned my journey is, atypical. It's different than most to where I am today. So I started in one career and I decided that that wasn't really what I wanted to do, and I pivoted and I changed, and I'm working on my what will be hopefully my second career. So that journey for me included when I was your age, just a few years ago. Um, I graduated high school. I went to college, and I just decided that that really wasn't the path for me at the time. And for me, I was fortunate enough to get into a career where, um, through hard work and just just really hard work, I was able to really excel and move forward without going to school. It did have its limitations, not going to college, but for me at the time, it didn't matter, and I was able to be successful. And like I said, I'm pivoting now, and I'm looking to do something that I really am interested into. So, it talks about getting unstuck and relating majors to careers. So for me, getting unstuck is just I just made the move to do something different. And that's what
Mhm.
I did when I felt that I was stuck or that I wasn't content in what I was doing every day. So,
Yeah.
you know, I would say that's really a big thing for you guys to always keep in mind that your majors can change, your careers can change, even throughout this journey. I was a business major and I was really thinking I was going to be going into business and working in, the private sector in human resources. And then I pivoted from that. That's just
Mhm.
3 years ago. And, I'm a little bit further along than you guys, but I pivoted again
Yeah.
and I decided that I wanted to go into higher education. So you're never stuck into anything. And your major is flexible. Like Nikki said, she was I think she said a psychology major and sociology, right? And so she pivoted and now she's doing something, your major you can relate it to anything. So that's
Mhm.
what I
Yeah.
think.
Yeah, thank you, Reggie. I think, when it comes to these life skills that we're using, I'm just going to throw a question out there. What kind of skills do you think are most helpful when you're navigating this journey? I can start by talking about a few that I know that would be extremely helpful. The development of curiosity is an important factor.
I can share
Mhm.
some of the answers. We actually have a lot of people saying organization, communication, self awareness, research, time management, discipline,
Mhm.
networking. So those are some perseverance, curiosity, good habits, interpersonal skills. So those are some of the main answers that we have from today.
Yeah, yeah, self-awareness is a big one. And I would say self-awareness is something that we see um, even more needed these days, mostly because I think there is an information overload aspect that's happening in terms of we have access to information, but rectifying what information is the information that's most helpful can be difficult. So self-awareness and knowing that you're mindful through your experiences and that you're engaging and you're learning. And I think, that awareness is hard to develop and can be. The development of curiosity is something, what that means to me is that it would be, I might have a concept in my mind of what I want to do, but I'm remaining open to experience and or what other things, that I might not know. I'm learning through others about those things and I'm not closed off. So I think, just to wrap up this particular part is that you want to think about what are the things that, maybe you're reluctant to get started, or one of the things that, are kind of, again, pushing you to a point where you feel like you just don't know how to move forward. Um, all universities will have some sort of support system for that. Okay. So questions to ask yourself. One of the things that I think my job has kind of come into is deciding or understanding what are the most important questions to ask yourself as it relates to this transition. and in a sense, putting closure to some of your experience that you might have had in high school, to be able to start your college experience in a way that you feel that you are off to a good start. One of the first question is, and this is something that I think is a common question, but I'm curious what your response would be. What do you hope to get out of college? What is it, maybe what is the one thing that comes to mind, just because there might be multiple, but the one thing that first comes to mind about what you'd like to get out of your experience in college?
Looks like we have growth, a job, new experiences, networking opportunities, good career, a degree, finding my passion, knowledge, meeting new people, experiences, opportunities, self-growth, connections, lots of finding passion and lots of growth.
Great, great. And that can happen in so many different ways for people. I think staying connected with understanding that when you're in high school, there's a different kind of, I don't want to say game, but there is a different blueprint for expectations. And I think when it comes to college, some of the things that can be hard is to adjust to those new expectations. And it can be hard to understand the academic component, but when it comes to career, you do want to stay grounded in what is it that I'd like to get out of it, and not that you're going to class, taking exams, and then and not engaging in that meaningful interaction. So definitely that one is important to be sure of. I don't know that many people understand maybe the differences between the liberal arts education and other type of institutions or their specific programs that they might have. But with liberal arts, there's an emphasis on the development of critical thinking abilities and these other didactic skills. And this is why the majors can be transferable to many different areas. And a lot does depend on the experience because that's what you're showing to employers when you're applying for an internship or you're applying to a job. So that's just an important factor to consider, that being clear on what you're liking to get at, like, would you like to get out of it? My next question is, how do you define career success? This one might be a little bit more challenging.
We have contentness, being happy, happiness, satisfaction, a job that I enjoy, stability, passionate, loving what you do, good income, stability, fulfillment. Yeah, those are the main answers.
Yeah. So I think this is another one that there are many different ways that people can describe this. So becoming clear on what it is that you believe success is going to be important. The component of how much money you make, just a quick story. One of the things that this is about, you might say about 3 years ago or so, we had a student who graduated with an engineering degree, and he started out really nice salary, and he came back about a few years later, and he had said to me, Nikki, I would take a $20,000 cut to be happy rather than be in the job that I'm in. Right. Sometimes we have these expectations that we don't really know who set the expectations, whether it's ourselves or whether it's someone else. So I think it's important to kind of think about that in terms of how you define success, because you may learn that through experiences, and you will if you're conscious of it. But if you don't have an understanding of that, it can be hard to understand what you're working toward. And so if you are someone who is wanting to have a value of making a lot of money, you want to kind of think of the other factors that might come into play as well, and to think through that. So that's it. So what expectations do you have for yourself? And I bring up this expectations is that, is this something where you want to set, I'm going to meet other people through clubs and organizations, or I'm going to be intentional if I'm, rooming on, on campus, to be able to make sure that I move outside my comfort zone, and make sure that they are, your expectations. Parental pressure is going to be there. We know that. All of our career coaches definitely are trained to help and understand what that, how do we separate out values? But it is important to develop these internal resources that will help you answer these questions as you move on through your time here. So there are a few more questions. One, what do I enjoy learning about? This is important. Sometimes we'll find that students will come in and they major in something, again, like I said, because they thought they had to, but not because they enjoy learning. I'm just going to put that out there. Is there something that you enjoy? It doesn't have to be even academics, but something you enjoy learning about.
We have a whole bunch of different topics that are showing up here: culture, history, technology, languages, but we do also have a question that someone posed here. And it says, is it okay to pursue a minor or major that's purely due to enjoyment of it, like a passion minor or major?
Yeah, you're going to get different responses for this one. I will always give the response that it is about your engagement and your learning. I had mentioned at the beginning that we often think in terms of designer careers, but when you have a passion for something, this is something you definitely want to dive into. And depending on the other factors related to that major, because there are other logistical things like timing and stuff, but you want to make sure that you're connected to the material learning. And then this way you can see how you can bring that in to whatever your future self or future position will be, or your future career. So there are a lot of careers that aren't even created yet for us to be able to say, this is good or this isn't good. If you're tapped into and you have a passion for something, my suggestion would be that you want to go into that place, because that's where you're going to find that, maybe, what we call like in the flow, whereas that you feel like you have that passion and that you just can be more productive because you're enjoying what it is you're doing. You want to do well academically, so you do want to kind of test out the different majors if you want to, or minors if you want to test it out through electives or other options. So maybe you don't want to take the minor right away, but maybe you take a class. So there are different ways that you can play with that, but I definitely would recommend that you want to enjoy the major that you have. And like I said before, it's definitely something where you can meet requirements without having to major in something specific for, Okay. Next question. This is a really, really important one. Where do I feel most accomplished? Not where other people tell you this was great. And this is kind of, one of those things that you can put in the chat box if you feel like you'd like to get, this might be a longer response, but I do want to put that out there, is that where you find the most accomplishment will give you insight into the kind of skills that you like using. So a trick really quick that we use with students and also with alumni, when they have a hard time understanding what skills they like using or what their interests are, we'll ask them, where's the last time you felt accomplishment? If someone hasn't felt accomplishment, then the next step would be to put themselves in a situation where they can start to feel that, right? And so we would help them with that. But to reflect on accomplishment, any accomplishment we have, it boils down to specific knowledge or transferable skills that we're using at that time. And so over, asking yourself this over time, you'll start to see patterns. And what are your experiences that were most meaningful? That's another type of question that's somewhat similar, but you do want to reflect on these things. Some of the things that we know through time is that there are three most, I'd say the biggest things that come up when someone's not sure or, undecided about their future direction. I'd mentioned lack of self-awareness. We work a lot on that, and some of it's through questions and reflection, I would say, is the thing that is most missing when it comes to students coming in and when they're having issues. The reflection and even writing, and this allows us to come to some conclusions that we might not have gotten to otherwise. The other big thing is lack of career and company knowledge. And so when you are at a college, you want to do, or even before, you want to do the most you can to learn about careers, not just by talking to one or two people, but really knowing where to find the information. We help students to find the most and curate the information that's most helpful to them, so they can learn about careers and companies, which again, if that's lacking, usually students will have a hard time deciding what they might want to do. And then the other big area is lack of related experience. Now, it's important to have experience, but you want to be intentional eventually about your experience. I say eventually because sometimes we don't know what we want to do. So you might want to get a job where you can start to develop skills, but eventually you would start to change your parameters or change how you're deciding what you want to experience, what it is that you're trying to accomplish through that experience. So as you can see, I'm using the word experience a lot because a lot of what happens is that experience is what shapes us. I'll give an example and a story. So for this, I've had several students, and I don't know, I'll give the student's name. Her name would be Kim, but this represents a lot of different people. But so senior year comes in to talk with me, and she says, I've been working at this restaurant job for the past 4 years while I've been at school. I needed to make money, and this was the place where I made the most money. I'm in health science, and I really want to get something in health science. What do you think I'd said to her? What do you think the response that I would give would be? We talk about related experience, right? What ended up happening to her was that she developed her career in the restaurant business before she realized and understood it, because all the experiences that she had on paper and on her resume were related to her restaurant position. So when you're looking at your resume, and it's definitely important for you to be mindful of, one of the first things when you come to university is, do I have a resume that I'm proud of? And I want to have someone to look at that so I can understand it a little bit better. Even if you don't have one developed, that's one of the first things you really want to do to get that in order. But for this person, it was really hard. And for many others, it's really hard for them to take in this concept of, oh, major is only one part, or minor is only one part of the bigger picture. But the other things that are really important are the accomplishments that you've had, the results that you've yielded. And the only way you really can do that is through the experiences that you have and how you talk about them. So that's going to be, one of the things that's really important. But these are a few questions. That is an example. We would have an activity where we'd have students, where you talk with other people about this, and then you'd start to think about those times when you maybe felt accomplished or you had meaningful experiences. So yes, I would say a tip is start or update your resume before you come into the institution. And, you want to have maybe an activities or a brag sheet available so you can kind of start to be mindful of the things that you are proud of, right? And I emphasize that because you want to make sure that you truly are proud of them. Some other questions that we get from students, common questions. What if I am passionate about 2 different subjects or majors? So I would say it from the standpoint of employers and what employers are looking for. They are looking for you to be able to be successful academically. And knowing that major is one part, you'd have to decipher whether or not, just because you're passionate about it, you should be majoring in it, right? In the past, and this is one of those script changes from high school to college, when you are in high school, the more academics, right, it is seen as maybe better, right? Because you want to do more and you want to achieve in that sense. But the volunteering and all these other things come to play, and they're heavily they look at those things to be able to say whether or not the person is more well-rounded. And so you don't always have to satisfy your passion through a major. You could, and in my opinion, you could do this through experiences as well. When employers look at resumes, I can tell you that they're not saying, oh, you had a double major. They're more saying what kind of experiences, and if it's a specific major, it'll be a question of academic projects that you had in the classroom where you were able to apply knowledge and skills. So would you add anything else to that, Reggie?
Yeah, I think you touched on it for me on that.
Yeah.
I would say, find club, if you're passionate about 2 different subjects or majors, I would find, like Nikki kind of said, college is different from high school. So there's different ways to explore subjects, majors. There's, great clubs and organizations related to pretty much anything on campus. At Stony Brook, there's over 400 different clubs and organizations that you can join. So there's different outlets to find out what you're passionate about and ways to find information about it.
Yeah. And so the thing that, just to kind of build off of that, the thing that, people will have struggled with, especially alumni who I've met with, is that they're trying to satisfy everything in their career basket. And it doesn't always have to be that way. And I think this is where it's a really good opportunity to talk to a career coach. We call our career counselors career coaches here, interchangeably, depending on the university that you're in. It may be called something different. But at the university here, we have what is called a career communities model, where we have 7 career interest communities and 1 exploring community. And this isn't just a university at Stony Brook thing. It's not a Stony Brook thing. It is a career services shift, where we're trying to create communities, ecosystems of support to help you grow and learn from your peers, as well as faculty and alumni and employers. So, we know that, if student has this specific interest, if they're going to be in, let's just say, business as one of our career communities, they're going to be exposed to a lot of other things that will widen their understanding of what options they might have in that area. But understand, when you go to the school that you're in, you really want to understand the framework in which your career center functions. When it comes to the first year, you do want to see what clubs and orgs you can get into for leadership purposes in the development, and also being with like-minded people. So that's going to be an important piece. Our exploring career community is to help folks that really just don't know where to begin. And so when it comes to that, it would be, it could be something like, I want to do business, but I'm not sure where. Or it can be, I have so many interests and I don't know where to begin, right? Because that happens often too. We have students subscribing to all different communities, and that's not good, because it's information overload. And so that doesn't help as much. So that's definitely something to be mindful at whatever institution.
Hey, Nikki, we do have a follow-up question here related to this topic, but someone wants some advice on what if you're towards the end of your academic career and you find your interest in a different area through an experiential learning opportunity? What advice do you do if you're already like a senior student, but through some sort of opportunity, you find interest in something completely different than what you're majoring in?
Yeah, that is such a great question. And it does happen often, as Reggie was just talking about, his interest had changed. So there are a couple of factors. One is, from a marketing standpoint, what your resume would look like. I think we would approach it where we would really look to find transferable qualities that you developed throughout your experiences to market you better for the skill, like for the job, to highlight the accomplishments and skills that employer is looking for. The other thing that's a factor is whether or not you've been connected with people in this field. Maybe you had one experience, but you don't have a mentor or an alumni mentor in the career field you have interest in. So this is getting a little bit into the support of, developing authentic relationships with people. You don't want to be closed-minded in that sense. Another reason to not be closed-minded is that you don't really know necessarily what's going to happen that might change your interest. And it does happen quite often where people will change their interest because of some profound experience they had where they felt like they were truly learning and making a difference. So I'd say, just to sum up, I think, it's not a bad thing to develop, to change your interest, but it would depend on the past experiences the person had to be able to better market that person, and or to expand their network in a way that would help them understand more inside information about that career field. Yeah. I hope that answers your question. Okay.
Yes, it does. Thank you.
All right, great. Okay, so this next one I think is really important, the testing the waters. And I think I already really touched upon this as it relates to selecting your, let's see, your elective that is within a passion that you might have. It is a way to be able to explore without committing to a different major. You don't necessarily have to make a major decision right away. One of the things I talk to first year students about, incoming students, is that, let's just say, if personality type, in terms of interacting with the world, some people are really, really, on top of things. They have their checklist and they want to make sure everything's done. And usually this type of person the personality type would really want to make this decision very quick, right? They'd maybe want to make the decision before they even came to college, right? And so if you're applying to a specific program, and you're really interested in it because you have experience already in something wonderful, that's great. The other side of it, though, is that if you're not really sure, let's just say someone who is just kind of going with the flow, you kind of want to really think about things in terms of how much do I really know about myself yet to be able to make a decision like major, or and try, if you have supporting reasons to be able to say why you want to do a major, then by all means go ahead, then there's no issue. But if you're doing it because you think you have to, or it's an expectation, right? So whether you approach it, whether your checklist and you want to get it done, understand that you're going to learn a lot about yourself over time, and you don't have to make that decision right away. We usually at the universities, we have support to be able to help you make this decision. So I would utilize the support to be able, if you're feeling like you're in that situation, to be able to help make better decisions in this area. Okay, I just wanted to make sure that we got to everything. Okay. All right, so this is an activity that we use with students, and it's one that you might have heard of already, but it is something I mentioned earlier where, we work a lot on helping people increasing self-awareness, understanding their interest, personality type, their values, right, in terms of where their values come from and how that connects to careers. But the other big thing that you're going to want to think about is, how do I currently understand the career world? And understand that lack of career knowledge is really big, right? And what people usually function like is they use hearsay information usually to make important decisions, which is what we try to tackle and try to help students with. But what does that mean? It means I spoke to my aunt, I spoke to my father, and they told me this, and this is what it is, as opposed to kind of looking at it and being resourceful for themselves. They might choose to make decisions with inaccurate and or incomplete information. So we really, really hone this important of like knowing where to find the information and to look at it from multiple perspectives. A tool that we use at the university is called REASSEC, but it's self-directed search, which is a really popular career theory that's used. I'm not going to get into the theory, but essentially this is what's called, this is a different environment types based on your interests. And this is something that does develop over time. It's not innate. It is something that can develop. And so what happens is we have resources that can help you code any of the top 3 that you pick to environments that might be a good fit for you based on that top 3. So what I want you to do for me is I want you to go ahead, and if you have a pen and paper in front of you, perfect. It would be, if you don't, try to find something where you can just get a pen and paper. I'm going to very briefly describe these environments. And I want you, as I'm speaking, I want you to think about what one sounds most like me. And then we're going to debrief this a little bit. So the first one I'm going to start with is realistic. The realistic environment is a job where you're working with your hands. Usually it can be something where it's more practical. It's, maybe it's, you have athletic ability, maybe you want to walk around a lot, you're a kinesthetic learner, right? But there is this sense of wanting to use your hands and walk around and be interactive. So an example for careers for that could be something like engineering. It could be, something related to athletics, but it can be other things too. It could be even recruitment, because you're walking around and you're not behind a desk, right? Investigative. For folks that are interested in healthcare, typically investigative is the first letter for them. Now, I'll tell you why. Now, you think about it in terms of the amount that you actually use a skill, right? Investigative skills is a heavy amount of problem solving and curiosity and thinking. So doctors and researchers, these tend to be the people who want to be in an investigative environment, right? We're getting out of job titles here. I'm not talking, they can be arbitrary. That's why I like this model. So investigative, these are usually our researchers and our doctors. And depending on where I is, whether it's your first or whether it's your last, it's going to depend on how much you have that interest in your career. Artistic. these are folks that not just, people who like to express themselves through their work. They can be people who think creatively, not just visually, right? Like drawing or painting. So there can be this different, maybe I give an example of marketing or graphic design or something like this, that you have a different kind of intuitive sense of how you do things. But it does traditionally mean also artistic abilities in that area as well. Social environment, these are people who really want to help others, and not just in the sense of doesn't have to just be that you want to be a therapist. It could be that you want to help a cause, or something that you do is connected to helping or teaching, or it can be counseling. But these tend to be the helpers. And again, depending on where it is how much of that you have in your job. I'm going to go to the last two real quick, and then we're going to launch a poll so you can answer for us which one you think is your first. Enterprising. These are our business type people. These are the people who want to lead for organizational goal, economic gain. They're people who, entrepreneurs, maybe want to take risks. They can manage others. They don't have to be entrepreneurs, but they're people who really like to manage people and like to, again, lead for organizational goals. And so that's, that one I feel like is somewhat misunderstood, but depending on like the person, we'll delve into that more. Conventional are people who tend to like processes, procedures. They're people who don't necessarily like to work with people, but maybe work with things, right? So they're administrative, right? The systems behind things. So operations is a good example of that. Okay. So for this one, I'm going to ask you if you could think about it for a moment. Which one, if you can, is the top environment that you think would be the one that you'd pick? And so for the launch for this one, if I can ask for someone to just press that. This is a poll. Perfect. Awesome. Wonderful. Yeah.
Hey, Nikki, while we're waiting for those results, I do see a question here. Someone wants to know, what if you feel as if you fall under both or more than one category equally? Is that possible?
That's a great question. What I've come to learn is that when someone feels like equally both are, show up for them, the order in which they are will be impactful. Sometimes people will search through, and there's a resource called ONET Online where you can sort through jobs based on codes, where you can say, okay, 1 is realistic, 2 is investigative, and 3 is artistic. Well, the system, just again, that's ONET Online. I can go ahead and send that to you, or I can put it in the chat. When you go into the advanced search features there, you can play around with the order. And sometimes what happens to people is they start to see the jobs that come up that are connected to the order in which they select things. And then they could start to play around with it and say, you know what, investigative is really 1, it's not 2. So this is a part of the learning experience. I would say sometimes it's hard to reflect back, but if you have this model in your mind, you can understand the career world from these 6 environment types, and then reorder as you start to learn more about yourself and become clear on what it is that you like about them. And that's something you would go through with a coach.
Perfect. Thank you, Nikki.
Yeah, absolutely. I'm going to end the poll and then here. All right. Yeah. So investigative, I'm not surprised by that one. I think and then engineering with the realistic, I can definitely see that as well. So for you, if you're really interested in delving into this a little bit further, I would suggest to go to ONET online.org, and you would be able to just click on advanced search, and then you'll be able to see how you can search through all the occupations that are coded in there from Bureau of Labor Statistics. So this is a very helpful resource. When I meet with seniors that say, I wish that they would have seen it much earlier, that's why I share it with you. So that's one tool that we would use an example. So we have two more slides, and this is really just, we talked a little bit about the importance of self-awareness and the importance of life skills. And at the university here, we do have workshops to help develop that more. And so people understand that they can cultivate their talents and their strengths through time that they're here, and that we can help them with that. And we talked a little bit just now about the importance of understanding careers and the importance of understanding how you can cluster careers. To be honest with you, there's so many career fields out there, and there are even many more that will be created, right, by the time you even graduate. So that's why when you have job titles, it's kind of hard to function. The suggestion would be something like this to help navigate those waters. Okay, and now we're just going to end with just some tips that I have for the summer, your summer experience, things that you might want to do to help you develop even more, so that you can kind of be at the top of mind. You can have some things to be thinking about. You want to select experiences where you can develop or enhance skill and knowledge. Now, sometimes I think there is this myth that, you can only work if you want to be paid, you're only working in a job like at a retail store, or a restaurant job. Now, I'm not saying those things are bad. If you want to do them, go ahead, right? Like that's fine. But if there is a thought that you're just doing it to make money, there are other options to be able to align your experiences, to be able to develop and hone skills and be paid at the same time. So definitely understand that and know that there are a lot of opportunities where you can do that. And again, this is something that a coach would help with when you're at a university, or even with a guidance counselor as well. Talk with a supervisor, professionals about their career development. I'm just, that's a really important thing. We talk a lot about what's called informational interviewing, or having career conversations with faculty, with your supervisors, with other students that are senior to yourself, right? And what that does is it allows you to understand that your career path isn't A to B, right? It kind of looks a lot like a scribbly line all over the place. And that's kind of for a lot of people. Maybe 1% of the population, they know what they want to do and they do that and they're happy, but that's not the majority usually. Okay. You want to reflect on what you liked or didn't like about your experiences. So this is important, not just in the summer, but always. Typically, the two things that people don't do when it comes to, making sure they're picking the right experiences, they don't reflect after the experience and have a conversation about what they liked and they didn't like. They just jump into the next thing, right? Because they know they need to gain experience. But the thought here is that you want to do that more intentionally and reflect. The other thing that people generally don't do is the research. They don't learn about the career fields. They don't learn about the companies, and then they apply and they don't know what they're applying to. So the research is important. That's why we talked about the career and company knowledge. And then on the other side, understanding your reflection and that, systems to be able to help you do that. So we talked at the beginning that transition is a really, as a process, and that this transition from high school to college, there are some things that I ended up finding a SUNY blog that, has more information if you're interested. But there's a few things just to kind of close our conversation today, or at least the PowerPoint or the webinar. You want to embrace being nervous. And so if you feel that you're entering into, uncertainty, well, you are, right? And so embrace that, understand that is right. That's going to be something that's continuous throughout life. And I would say even these days, we understand that being comfortable with change and uncertainty, and like, I don't want to say make friends with your nerve, like your anxiety, but that's basically kind of the thought process there. And there is a way to do that. And a lot of people are going through it, and you're not alone. And that's the big thing there. You want to learn to balance your academics and other things that you do. One thing that I would say, and I know Reggie is going to definitely, he can definitely attest to this, is that, sometimes we have our student leaders that decide to do everything and they want to be involved in everything, and that's awesome. And they do a great job, but then they have no time to intentionally develop a career path because they're in a lot of student leadership positions. So understand that balance is important, and really checking in with yourself, because if you take on too much, it can be hard to kind of, rebound from that. Allow yourself to make mistakes. We have this thing called fail forward, or, we talk a lot about, growth versus fixed mindset, and that we are constantly learning from our mistakes and probably learn the most from our mistakes, and everybody makes them. So definitely embracing them and talking through them can help you learn. Be smart with school resources. Certain things you definitely want to be aware of. It hurts me every time I hear a senior come in and say, I never even heard about the Career Center. And that might be very true, but that also might mean that they weren't really looking for it either. And right, we usually find the things that we're looking for. So that's an important thing. Understand how you learn best. I cannot emphasize this a lot. We have what is called CAR 110 for our freshman and sophomore students going through the beginning stages of career development. And one of the new aspects to the curriculum we just added is really going into multiple intelligence theory, as well as understanding just what is your learning style. So this way, not just within academics, of course you want to do well academically and understand study styles and things like this, but if you are not learning, then you're not engaged. That's the same thing with a career field or an experience. So you want to either have several assessments that can help you better understand how you learn best, and then it will also help you study better too when you know that. And don't give up. Perseverance is going to be something that you're gonna constantly have to kind of go back and say, okay, how can I do this differently next time? Right. And that would be a good way of, and a healthy kind of way of approaching this, is because the expectation to never make mistakes or see that's going to be an easy road might be, not a complete picture of what goes on. And that, you want to have support around you, and you want to have people be able to help you through the process that you go through at college. And so at Stony Brook, we have many different ways that we can help students feel like that they're part of a smaller community. And that's why we really emphasize these clubs and organizations, because it does give the feel that you're connected to smaller communities within the university.
Hey, Nikki, we do have a question regarding that. Someone would like to know what opportunities are offered to first-year students at the Career Center, given they're so far away from starting their career.
Yeah, that's a great question. I'm glad that you asked that. So a couple of things that we've developed through our Exploring Career community, we have what's called a career success roadmap. And so what this is we've separated the 4 stages of career development into 4 stages. And we have certain questions and things that we think they should be thinking about at their exploring stage, their experience stage, their focus stage, which is I experience now, I need to kind of make some decisions, and then your thrive stage, right? This is, I'm transitioning out of the institution. I have to really understand what, I need to do to be able to transition successfully. That's an example of one. We have assessments. Taking an assessment by itself without further reflection is probably a mistake. I know people will say, yeah, I took a lot of assessments, for the fun of it. But if you're not talking through those assessments with a coach or with someone who understands how to interpret them, it can really be a mistake. So definitely, the assessments as well. I did mention we have CAR 110, a credit bearing course for students that are interested in wanting to delve in a little bit more and have maybe that plan in their schedule, in their academic schedule, where they're actively learning about career development and how to gain experiences. We also have a career action plan that's used for all students, but this is kind of really to the point of saying that we can only think so long, right? And we need to take action and move toward a direction. We do take a coaching model at the Career Center here. So we will always be asking after appointments, do you know what you're focusing on, after your appointments, what goals you have to be able to accomplish. And then when they come back, we ask, what got in the way, right? And then what additional goals would you want to be working on? And not big goals, they can be small goals. We try to piecemeal them so people understand the process better.
Perfect. Thank you, Nikki. And we do have a follow-up question, that relates to this. We have a student who's wondering that they want to take some time to really explore their interests. And is there a rush necessarily to pick a major as soon as they come onto campus?
Yeah, so the schools are all different in terms of the colleges that are here. And I think, when you're talking about engineering, computer science, some of these other STEM majors, there is usually more of a rush to want to get into these. I'm not going to say whether that is, I think it's important to make sure that you've done the right research about the major itself. And that's different for everyone. but you don't really have to make that decision usually until somewhere around your sophomore year. So it isn't necessarily needed unless there's some special requirement for a college that you want to go into. And I'm not an academic advisor, so I don't want to necessarily say exactly, but I will say that, we have people changing majors all the time, and it's okay. It's something that it happens, but you probably will change it less if you do it right the first time in terms of exploring and making sure you're utilizing your resources.
Great. And for a student who might be nervous, a first-year student just walking into that career center, we have someone asking, is there some sort of fair or event happening on campus which students can attend?
Absolutely. So we have, as I mentioned, the 8 career communities, and each of the career communities have workshops to help students understand the industry better. We, at this current moment, we offer virtual services. So this is drop-in appointments, and it's not really appointment, but it's virtual drop-ins where each coach has a certain amount of hours. And if you have a 15-minute question, you can go ahead and you can go right onto our website and then click on the Zoom link and talk to a coach. Same with virtual appointments as well as, like I had mentioned already, some other workshops that they might have. The other thing that's really important to know is that, especially at Stony Brook, is that when freshmen come in, if you join one of or subscribe to their career community, one of the career communities or more of the career communities, you will get easy access to information that's specific to career interest. So for example, if you're going to a college career center and you go in, it's kind of, in the past, it used to be like a la carte, you kind of take what you need. Now it's more of, if you subscribe to a community, you will get bi-weekly emails based on the job and the internships that you want to know about. And so we try to customize the experience for students. And then again, yeah, so I'll leave it at that, but I think that answers the question.
Perfect. Thank you, Nikki.
Yeah, you're welcome. So just to close, I think, there are a lot of anxieties that, can come up when it comes to this transition. I think, these last points that I just noted, these are some things just to kind of keep in mind. You want to have a support system, and you want to know that you feel like you have a place to go if you need to connect with someone. So I think that's always an indicator where, especially within Stony Brook, we have that support system for students. It's just a matter of them knowing that they have it and that they can utilize it. So I hope that through this workshop that you found at least one or two things that connected with you, whether it be that it's related to decision making and being more intentional about your decisions, or about making sure that you have quality experiences that are maybe more intentional and when you're experiencing that, you actually are mindful of your experiences. And I'd say lastly, reach out for support when you need it. And I think that will be helpful as well for you throughout your time. I'm absolutely open to answer any other questions you might have. But I'd like to thank you. And this is, I guess, the end of the workshop. So if you don't have any other questions, I just want to thank you for your time. It's great to connect with you.
All right, thank you so much, Nikki. It looks like everyone is thanking you here. The last question I think that has come up more than once is, how many times do you recommend our incoming students to attend the Career Center or visit the Career Center?
Yeah, so, I just realized that I did miss out on something that I should say. We do have job and internship fairs throughout, usually it's at the beginning of each semester. So, I just want to, that's one thing I forgot to say. So we have on-campus job and internship fair that happens as soon as the semester starts. And then we have, for example, this semester, we have IT and engineering job fair every semester, business, journalism, communications job fair. And then the last one would be healthcare, human services, and research. So just know that every semester we have those as well. The other thing I would say is that we don't work in terms of caseloads. So I would say it would depend on what you're working on. So if you're working on developing your resume to apply for something, you might see a coach, on and off for like each week for 3 weeks, or every other week for 3 weeks. I would say that's a good kind of measure. And it's important to know that you can go back multiple times, but the thing that we are gauging is whether or not you're moving forward. If you're not moving forward with whatever it is that you're trying to do, there might be some other things going on, and therefore there might be a referral. But if it's intentional and we're helping you, we would never really turn you away from resources.
Do you want me to leave this down here?
Mm-hmm.
Great.
Perfect. So I think that concludes our session today. Thank you so much, Nikki, and thank you so much, Reggie, from the Career Center for giving us this presentation. I would like to thank you all for attending this session today. It was one of our record hits, so we had so many attendees today. And again, if you have any more questions, please feel free to just contact admissions and email us at enroll@stonybrook.edu. We have that email right in the chats, and we would love to answer your questions and reach out to our colleagues at the Career Center if you have any questions for them. Thank you so much.
Good luck.
Thank you, everyone. Good luck. Thank you, Nikki.
Thank you, Reggie.